It's Uvalde Radio. I'm Robert Miguel, and good Friday morning to you. Friday means we get to talk to our very special friend. So with me on the phone, professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at BigFanboy.com, and the show director at Dallas Comic Show, the incomparable Mark Walters. What up, buddy?
Robert, no matter what you hear, no matter what I say, do not open this door.
Wait. What's that? Is that a movie reference?
Yeah, that's Young Frankenstein.
Oh, God, I haven't seen that in so long. Yes, I know you're a big fan. Okay. It sounded good, though. It was good.
I've been revisiting a lot of older films lately, and so that was one of the ones that was most recent. That and Airplane. I just recently, there's a new 4K transfer of Airplane that is really, really nice. They did a great job on that. So I'm kind of revisiting some old classics lately.
Well, and that's all you can do. Of course, we got Mark Walters here, world-renowned film critic, but nothing's coming out in theaters, so you're just twiddling your thumbs and reviewing, right? I mean, that's kind of what we've been doing. I know all summer, I've got a teenage daughter, and we've been watching old films. What did we watch most recently that was really cool? Oh, we watched the Scream films. We've watched some really good 80s stuff. I think we watched Ghost recently, and, just some...
Yeah, I just saw Ghost myself again, and that's another one that Paramount just released a new 4K Blu-ray of. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm shilling for Paramount, but Paramount actually has been sending me quite a few of these Blu-rays, and they're doing a really great job on kind of updating these classic films, with like new versions of the Blu-rays. Like, I think we talked about Pretty in Pink before, and then of course Airplane and Ghost, and there's a whole series of, kind of just those great classics. I also just watched, there was a new steelbook for Clueless, which they did, like a new kind of a transfer on that, and it looks really, really good. So yeah, Paramount's really rocking and rolling, and, I got to kind of put my hat off to them. I mean, they're not slowing down despite the fact that, this pandemic's going on. They're putting out some really good stuff.
Well, I would say that's actually smart and very, opportunistic. I mean, because if you think about it, without films out in theaters, it gives you an opportunity to repackage, re-release, that same stuff, the classic stuff. And let's be honest, it's good. And there are generations that haven't been exposed to it, and they've got a lot of downtime right now. So it's the time to get people kind of caught up on the classics, right? And get refamiliarized.
And it really amazes me, too, because, you mentioned Ghost, which I also just recently rewatched, and that's one that they did, kind of a new 4K transfer, for this new Blu-ray release. And it's really incredible how much of a difference that will make, because, some of these films, especially like Airplane, I mean, that movie came out 40 years ago,
right.
And because of this new transfer, it looks like it was shot yesterday. So it shows you just how much magic they can work as long as they have a really solid print to work off of. Now, it's interesting about Ghost, because Ghost, even though it came out in 1990, the transfer actually shows some of the bad quality of that film, because there's a lot of graininess in certain scenes that... it just kind of shows you how when film was processed in the 90s, they got a little bit sloppy from time to time. But it doesn't hurt the film at all. In fact, I actually, just considering I hadn't seen that film since very close to when it first came out, I was kind of impressed at how well it held up.
No, the story absolutely holds up, but you're right, the special effects ain't so special, especially, the supernatural stuff. And of course, it is more of a dramatic, like a dramedy, for the most part, and it really doesn't lean on the special effects, so I'm sure they didn't have a huge budget, because really the only special effects needed were like the kind of heaven and hell type of references, and they were kind of, few and far between, really, when you think about a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, it's also one of the first films that really implemented CGI. It was in terms of, we've seen a little bit of that in films like, I think, what was it, Young Sherlock Holmes and things like that, but Ghost was one of the first films that really kind of implemented CGI into the film, integrating it with the main stars. And, some of that stuff actually, towards the end of the film, it actually does still look really good. But then you've got, the stuff with him passing through walls that kind of almost looks like a cheesy made-for-TV movie.
Yes.
But I think it's just because we've come so far since then.
No, absolutely. We got 13-year-old girls that can do better effects on their cell phones, absolutely. But yeah, still a great film content-wise. And if you're a parent out there listening, I really hope you're doing your due diligence in turning your kids on to these cool movies, because me and my daughter, we recently watched Of Mice and Men, which is just, obviously it's a highly regarded book, but the movie is just as good, if not better, and there's just so many great films out there that we should be watching with our kids, and this is a great time to do it because we really can't do much about anything else. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right, man. Well, let's go ahead and let's talk about the big news. I think the big news in movies right now is that Mulan, the live-action Mulan, which you've been talking to us, off and on for the better part of a year, is going to be released on Disney Plus. It's kind of like if you've got the subscription, you pay $29.99, and then you can get the movie on Disney Plus, and then you still have access to it. Is that right?
Yeah, once you pay that money, you will have access to that film for as long as you have Disney Plus, because it's kind of like the money that you pay is unlocking the film for the duration of your subscription. So if you have a subscription to Disney Plus, I have one that I think is a 3-year subscription, which I'm now going into. I think I'm just now finishing up my first year. So if I buy Mulan, I'll have it for the next 2 years at least, unless I re-up my subscription. So it's kind of like adding it to your collection, really.
Right.
You're not just buying it to watch it, you're buying it to basically add it to your collection and watch anytime you want. And when you look at it from that perspective, because there's been a little bit of pushback from some of the people that have been reading about this online in terms of, the fact that they're charging $29.99 and not, something that's a little bit more affordable for like an individual and whatnot. But I keep telling people, you got to remember Disney markets to families.
Right.
They're looking for the money of families, and they're looking at this from the perspective of if you were to pack kids up in the car and go to watch a movie at a first run movie opening weekend at a theater, you're going to pay quite a bit of money to go see that. So $30 to be able to watch it from the comfort of your own home, and be able to hit the pause button, and be able to back it up if you miss some dialogue or something, then that's actually not that bad when you think about what we pay to buy a Blu-ray. If a Blu-ray comes out of a movie that we like, it's kind of the same thing. You're going to have this movie for as long as you have a subscription to Disney Plus. So you're basically, it's no different than adding a Blu-ray to your collection, and you're getting to see a first-run movie without having to, even get in the car and go to the movie theater. So I think $30 is actually not that bad of a fee.
Right.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays, because if this goes well, if Disney is able to make enough of a profit on this little experiment that they're doing, then it's very possible we could see other Disney films like Black Widow or Jungle Cruise or some of the other major Disney releases that have been getting pushed back over and over again. We could see the same thing happen with those movies. So we're going to be watching this really closely to see, kind of how this plays out. And I'm very interested to see if this will kind of trickle down with some of the other major movie studios like Warner Brothers and some of these people like Universal that have been pushing their movies back as well.
Well, I got to say this. First of all, I got to give it up to us here at Fanboy Friday, because we are obviously ahead of the curve as far as conversation, because we had this talk a couple of weeks back about, the theater at home price versus the, screening thing. And like you just mentioned, $29.99 for a family of 4, that's $7.50 a movie ticket. That is not bad at all, where you can, pop your own popcorn, drink your own soda, and you're saving $50 to $100 right there. So obviously
that's like 1990s prices.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously for a family, it's a great deal. Plus you get to keep it digitally. But for a single guy like you, a bachelor, going out and spending $30 on, or just for one movie is, not as good a deal, but again, you get to keep it, right? So, I think it's going to work out for them. I'm sure that they've got good finance money people, crunchers, that are kind of doing the math, and I'm sure that there's probably a low minimum whether they got to hit to make it work. But I think this is going to be the new way.
A couple of things you got to consider on this, and that is when I think about that number and how they arrived on that number, and I think the things that you really have to take into consideration is, first of all, like you said, the cost of what it would be if you actually did go to see this in a first-run movie theater, but also the fact that it's been estimated that they may have spent somewhere around $200 million on this movie.
Wow.
And if that's true, if that's true, then Disney is probably looking at this from the point of view of, we can't offer this for $10,
sure.
or we can't offer this for free with the streaming service. Like, we have to make some money on this movie. And here's the other thing. I mentioned this when I posted the article at BigFanboy.com. I mentioned the fact that Disney actually just declared in their third quarter for the year, they've had something like $4.72 billion in net loss.
Wow.
So they need this money bad. Like, they need this film to do well. And I think it's entirely possible that it could. When you look at the success of something like, say, Trolls World Tour, which was probably the first major release film that was kind of dumped to streaming back in, what was that, April?
Yeah, right.
And that film raked in the dough. I mean, at $20 a hit, that film brought in something like $352 million. I can't even remember what the numbers were. It was a crazy big number, to the point of where the studio was, absolutely thrilled with the returns on it. Now, Disney's probably looking at that, and they're probably thinking, well, if we can do that with Mulan,
right,
then we could justify, not putting this out in movie theaters. We could justify. But you also got to look at kind of the optics of that, and, this is one of the things that caused some of the rifts that have been going on now between some of these movie studios and some of the, like the movie theaters. Movie theaters like AMC, like, those guys are all ticked off now because the movie studio took a major first-run movie and put it on streaming and made all this money, and the theaters didn't get any of that. So if Disney does the same thing and ends up making a ton of money on Mulan, then that's just gonna be enemy number two. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays. But I know that they're really counting on this. They need this to do well. And that's also kind of a big question, because when you look at something like Trolls World Tour, it's easy to see why that movie did well, because you've got all these parents that are stuck at home with their kids. There's nothing new for them to watch. And then, hey, this Trolls movie's out. Why don't you watch that? So, of course, they're going to buy into it. But Mulan's not quite the same kind of family fare.
Right,
I guess still, because it's Disney, you can assume it's going to be geared towards families, but it's not like a little kid film, And so that's why I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays. And, of course, like I said earlier, if it does well, then maybe it could open the door for them to try this with something like Black Widow or Jungle Cruise and potentially make money off those as well. And this could really put Disney ahead of the curve for some of these other major studios, because Disney already has their own dedicated streaming platform.
Yeah.
So they've got the outlet to put it on. They don't have to go to iTunes. They don't have to go to Amazon. They can just use their own streaming platform and just charge a fee, and they can do this all day long.
Well, I think you made a good point earlier on about how you said, essentially the potential is there to cut out the middleman, which is the theaters. And that's not unlike what streaming, what digital music has done to radio and records, where people's primary place to hear new music was on the radio or buying it at the record store with a physical, copy. Now it's just direct, on your computer, on your phone, which basically just devastated two major industries, so we might see that with the major theaters, which, and again, we've said it many times on Fanboy Friday, we're the type of people that we love to watch movies in a theater, in the setting, there's something special about that. But during these times when it's a little risky, hey, we want to see new films. So anyway, that's great stuff. I think it's going to work out real well for him personally. Let's just go ahead and do a quick rundown at what information you have on as far as release dates. I know, like the Wonder Woman 1984 one, and then there's Bill and Ted put out an official real trailer. And again, I'm excited because that's going into theaters and straight to digital as well too. Streaming. So I think I'm just going to have like a watching party at home.
I'm very excited about Bill and Ted, and again, like we've talked about before, this is certainly in our wheelhouse because we grew up watching Bill and Ted. That was basically kind of like our high school yearbook. It's like growing up on Bill and Ted, and so I'm excited about it as well, and I am interested to see how it does, because I know their plan is to release it in both theaters and on streaming at the same time. The big question, I guess, at this point is, how many movie theaters are going to be open when that movie comes out? Are we going to be in a place where we can actually go see that in a movie theater if we should decide to do so? And yeah, like you mentioned, Robert, I think it's important to point out, too, that as much as we are talking about streaming and, kind of the excitement that surrounds it, I'm very much like yourself. I'm the kind of guy that I prefer being able to go and watch these movies in a theater and have that whole experience, but we've just got to play it safe, and we got to do it, the way we do it, whatever works for us. So I'm anxious to get back in a movie seat. I really am. And I hope that we get there sooner than later, especially with something like Tenet on the horizon. But yeah, as far as like Wonder Woman 1984, that's another movie that's kind of, a little bit in limbo right now. I mean, it may come out this year. It may get pushed to next year. And what's really, really interesting about, like, Mulan and Wonder Woman 1984 is that people probably don't realize this. Both of those movies were actually supposed to come out last year. Like, Wonder Woman 1984 got pushed back an entire year by Warner Brothers before COVID. And the same thing happened with Mulan. Mulan was supposed to come out last year, and because the Marvel movie slate kind of changed around, Disney decided to push Mulan back to this year. It was supposed to come out on March 27th, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden that's when it started, kind of that chain reaction of getting pushed back again and again and again. So had these movies come out on their original release date, we would have already owned them on Blu-ray. We would have already been talking about how we right. those movies, and it was over and done with. So it's interesting how sometimes those pushbacks can, in this particular instance, can really, really hurt a film.
Now, here's something that we haven't really talked about, but I'm wondering about if and when things go kind of back to normal or semi-normal or whatever. At some point in time, because of COVID, I'm sure that nobody's shooting right now, right? So at some point in time, movies will get released, and then there'll be nothing on the shelves.
We're seeing this with both films, and we're also seeing it with television because and streaming series as well. And the reason is because you have television shows and streaming series that have been shot, they're done, they're edited, they're ready, and they're pushing them back because of COVID. But now what's going to happen is you're going to get these new shows, you're going to get these new series, and then there's going to be this really long wait until the next season comes out. And that's what people they haven't quite experienced that yet. They're going to. Yeah. It's going to feel like waiting for the next season of The Sopranos with every TV show because, they can't shoot. Now, that said, there are some things that are happening in terms of film where they are kind of going ahead. They're using protocols and they're using, things to kind of be able to shoot while still having those precautions in place. Jurassic World 3 is shooting right now over in the UK. They supposedly have like a 200-page document that they've handed to all the actors that they have to read so that they understand all the protocols that they're going to have to follow while they shoot. I cannot imagine what that must be like for them to have to shoot that film that way. But then, you look at something like The Mandalorian and the technology that they're using to shoot shows like Mandalorian. They're now using that with other TV shows. And the technology I'm referring to is it's a soundstage that is a virtual stage. So they can put these people like on a train, or they can put these people out in the desert, and they're still on a soundstage. And to the human eye, you cannot tell the difference. It looks exactly like they are where they're supposed to be. So with that kind of technology now, you could continue to shoot films. You could continue to shoot TV shows, and the audience really not know that it's not real. So it's going to be really interesting to see where things go. But I know there are a lot of things that have been put on hold. There's a lot of films that were supposed to start shooting that have now been pushed back, and the same with TV shows. So I think what we're going to get a ton of stuff late in the year, early next year, and then we're going to have a really long, uncomfortable wait until the newer stuff comes out. We need to get ready for that.
You know what I'm thinking, though, also? There's potential for a lot of indie stuff, maybe stuff that just didn't make the cut to the big-name producers and the distributors, where maybe some stuff that just is more independent, more quirky, not mainstream, might give... Because once, like I said, once the shelves dry out, maybe they go, oh, well, hey, let's let's give this a try. And things like, Tiger King, that's how things like that get on the air, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we'll see more documentary series and films, and I'm going to make a recommendation of something that I just recently watched that I was kind of blown away by. If you are familiar with Shudder, which is another streaming service that plays basically horror films, there is a film that was made by a British filmmaker on there. I think his name is Rob Savage, and the film is called Host. And this was a film that was shot during quarantine and basically shot in a way to where it acknowledges COVID-19, it acknowledges quarantine, and it has to do with a group of friends that are having a Zoom meeting, and they awaken let's just say a supernatural presence that begins to terrorize them during their Zoom meeting.
Oh, wow, cool.
Less than an hour. It's less than an hour long, and Robert, it is incredibly terrifying, and I was really impressed with what they were able to do, especially considering the fact that they shot this thing basically as it looks. Like, you're watching it, you're watching all these people talking in a Zoom meeting, and they pulled it off. It's great. So I'm kind of excited to see what the future of film is going to hold for us. Yeah, no,
that sounds cool. I mean, it sounds like a kind of a COVID-19 Blair Witch type of, kind of scenario thing.
Yeah, imagine like Blair Witch mixed with Paranormal Activity.
Right.
It definitely gave me those kinds of vibes. But what's really amazing is it's less than an hour long, and it's exactly as long as it needs to be. Like, it didn't need to be anything more than that. All done in real time.
Well, you know what? I got to say this. You got to give it up to basically the good old, human spirit in that, we have problems. We still find ways to make things happen. So way to go, all you filmmakers out there doing what you got to do to keep cranking out that content. That's good stuff. Well, again, we've been talking to Mark Walters here, Fanboy Friday. I know we're kind of running a little bit late, but you mentioned that you've got an article up regarding Disney Plus and the live-action Mulan. So that's up there at bigfanboy.com. Any other cool content we should check out?
We're going to have a couple more cool things. Like, you can check out the trailers for some of the upcoming films. New Mutants is still planning on coming out, so hopefully we will see that sooner than later. And just keep your eyes peeled on there. We got some cool contests coming up too that you guys are going to want to participate in. And I've got my reviews for some of those Blu-rays we were talking about earlier in this episode, like Airplane and Ghost and things like that. If you guys want to check out what those Blu-rays are like and all the special features, you can find that at bigfanboy.com as well.
Roll right on. Good stuff. Again, that's bigfanboy.com. Check out all the latest news and reviews on film and other pop culture stuff. So give it up one more time. Professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at bigfanboy.com, show director at Dallas Comic Show. Mark Walters, thank you so much, sir. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Robert. You too.